How y'all doing? You hanging in there? This has been quite the night. My name is Tim, and let me just begin by saying it is such an honor to be out here with you all tonight. You're still here. I've been thinking about this and what I'd share for a couple of months now, and just kind of running through all the different stories. We all have a lot of failure stories, do we not? Let me name this on the front end. I imagine at some point in the night you were looking at your program and you leaned over to the person you came with and you said, "Who's this Tim Wilson guy? Have you heard of him?" And they said back to you, "No, but don't worry, it says here he's a pastor." Because that helps. But I have been thinking a lot about what would I share, what particular story. I gave myself a few criteria. I wanted a story that was somehow universal, some story that we all could relate to at some level or another, but I also wanted a story that was uniquely mine. And so one of my rules for myself was I needed it to be a story that I haven't resolved. It's a failure that I'm still kind of processing, working through, and so that the ending isn't just kind of I'm going to walk off, but really it's all great now. I'm still processing this particular story. So a couple of months ago, I'm thinking about Failure Lab and thinking about what I would share with you all, and I wake up in the morning and realizing I had a dream. And in the dream, there is a girl, and I know this girl. Her name is Molly. And Molly is in the center of the dream, but she's actually not in the center of the dream. Molly's in the dream, but she's if the dream was like a movie, she's not the main star in the thing. She's just kind of a supporting cast. She was just in the dream. And so I'm thinking about this girl who's just kind of hanging out in the dream. I was thinking about how do you describe these kinds of dreams? Let's put it this way. If the dream was NSYNC, she's like Joey Fatone. Does that help? She's like the appendix or the brown M&M. They're chocolate. Why brown? She's like, I was thinking, what's the point of this little pocket? She's the little pocket that sits on top of the big pocket in the dream. There's really you don't put change. She's Melania. She's there. We're not sure why she's there. We're not sure she knows why she's there. She's just there. I'm proud of that joke. So I wake up, and then I also realize, waking up from this particular dream, I realize that I haven't thought about Molly in a decade. Seriously, not once. 10 years have gone by, and I have not thought about Molly once. And so I'm thinking about why this dream. And it hits me, oh, no, that's a story. How do I tell the story? Where do you begin the story? How do you tell the story? I realize in order to tell the story well, I probably have to tell another story, kind of a story in a story, like M. Night Shyamalan style. So bear with me. I'm not even sure how to tell this story yet, but let me tell you another story first, and then we'll come back to the story of Molly. The other story, every time I tell stories to my kids, good stories begin with once upon a time. So this story, once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a boy. Now, let me pause there. The boy is me in the story. The once upon a time was roughly 2011, summer of 2011, and the land far, far away, Borculo. Are you from Borculo? Does that woo for? If you're here, who's there? Yeah, I grew up in Borculo. Now, in 2011, I married the girl of my dreams. I married my wife, Liza, not Molly. The stories about Molly, we'll come back to Molly, but I met the girl of my dreams the year before, and in the fall of 2011, we got married. And our wedding day, we did our wedding day right. We decided that we weren't going to do the pictures and stuff beforehand. The first time we were going to see each other was actually at the ceremony itself. And so, first time I see my bride she's in the back of the church, and I'm in the front of the church. And it's I don't know what language to use. It's magical, it's mystical, it's spiritual, it's holy, it's transcendent, whatever words you would use for that moment. The moments that you can't use with words, just can't capture them. She's in the back of the church, and it's the greatest day of my life. But it also was a bit painful because as I'm kind of standing there waiting for my bride to walk down the aisle, I look over my left shoulder and I realize that the front row of the church on the left side is empty. My parents had boycotted our wedding. In fact, they've boycotted our marriage. And the reason is because my wife grew up Catholic and I grew up Protestant. And after many theological debates leading up to or discussions or conversations, whatever you call those, leading up to the wedding, they had said, we just can't do this, and essentially allowed a theological debate to give them justification to close up their heart and walk away from us. Back to our story. So I have this dream, and in the dream, preparing for Failure Lab, in the dream is this girl, Molly. I have not thought about Molly in a decade. And so I'm waking up and I'm thinking, why on earth, and it hits me, oh. Now, I first met Molly when I was a freshman in college, which is now almost 20 years ago, which is weird for me. But I was a freshman in college, and I was visiting a good friend of mine from high school. He was down in Kalamazoo for school. I was in Holland for school, so an hour and a half away. And Molly was right up the hall from him. And I remember, first meeting her, she was coming down the hall, and she was magnetic. She was, always smiling, just perma smile. She's 5'4", but, just a ball of, energy and sunshine and rainbows and puppies and lollipops and the way Taylor Swift songs make you feel. And she's, all that, in a 5'4" frame. And I was, shy, and I didn't know how to approach, but I did get her AOL screen name. Do you remember Instant Messenger? Technology's gone backwards since Instant Messenger. And so I went back to my campus, and I kid you not, I waited in front of the computer for MalDog17 to pop up online. And when it did, I had a surge of electricity in my spine. It was just, At first, we talked sporadically, and then the sporadic kind of talks became regular. And then within a few months, we planned time to meet and to talk together. And I was after a couple months, we are talking a couple of times a day. And actually, it changed from just talking on AOL Instant Messenger to we actually wrote long-form letters to each other. So the letters that you write them and you put them in a box and a man takes them and puts them in another box, those letters. And over the course of 7 years, these conversations just continue. And in fact, there was a few times where I thought maybe the stars would align and we would find each other. But it never actually happened. We never, ever actually got together. We talked a lot. I fell in love with Molly. She was my first love. We talked about everything. We talked about politics and art and history and movies and music and religion and life. When you're in your young 20s, this world is a magical place. And we were kind of stumbling upon it together. And I fell in love with her. Now, here's the moment. So as these stories often go, I start dating a girl, she starts dating a guy, and we, out of respect for these two new relationships, we don't talk for about a year. My relationship ends, and I decide, of all people, of course, I'm going to reach out to Molly. I'd worked up the courage now. I'm going to go for it. We talk. She invites me to her new house. I'm excited. So I work myself up for this moment. I buy the roses. I put on the pleated pants. I'm ready. And I print off the MapQuest directions, put them on the seat next to me. Do you remember these? I put them on the seat next to me, and I make the drive. And thinking to myself, Celine is right. I do believe my heart goes on. And I make the drive to her new house. Now, here's how the story goes in the exact order that the story goes. I pull my Impala into her driveway. A man walks out of the house, and he is like a man's man, like a dude. You know what I mean? Like a dude man. He has a trucker hat on, flannel. He's wearing Wrangler jeans, like dude man. And he's got a beard. Take one part Paul Bunyan, one part 2018 Super Bowl halftime star Justin Timberlake. Put him in a blender, dude man. And he comes out of the house with a smile on his face. And then right behind him comes a woman, and she is pregnant. And it half a second or so, I realized that pregnant woman is Molly. Apparently, in the year that we hadn't talked, she did not tell me this, but apparently she had gotten married to Dude Man and is now carrying like baby Dude Man. I swear to you. Okay, so I'm standing outside the car now with my roses, like a schmuck, and realizing she's like married. Everything in me wants to get back in the car and to drive back home, but instead, I go inside and I eat lasagna like a good boy. And halfway into the meal, or so about a third of the way into the meal, there's a knock on the door. And it's her sister, and she invites her sister in, and she gets her sister a plate of food, some lasagna. And all of a sudden, this line of questions start coming. Molly says to her sister, Katie, tell Tim what you're studying in school. Tim, tell Katie what you do for a living. Oh my gosh, you two have so much in common. And I realized what was happening. It was a setup. I needed to get out of there. I in that moment, it was like I didn't want Katie. I wanted Molly. Like I had worked up the courage. I had waited 8 years now, and here I am sitting at the table with lasagna. And I recognized in that moment that I needed an escape, just like you would. You gotta get out of there. But I also needed an escape from, my heart. Like I needed an excuse to kind of like it just hurt too bad. It was raw, and it was betrayal and loss and anger and sadness, and it was all kind of bubbling to the surface. And so I, remembering a conversation earlier in the night, she had mentioned a pastor, and I did not like this particular pastor. And I very distinctly remember saying to her in this moment, let's go back to that conversation. I can't believe you like him, you trust him, of all people, you respect him. And I worked very hard to systematically, over the next several minutes, to systematically destroy this other pastor that she had referenced earlier. And in the process, what I realized what I was doing was systematically tearing apart and destroying 7 years of a growing friendship, a theological debate, a discussion. Once upon a time, I met a girl, and I proposed to her, a hook-nosed kid from Borculo, Michigan, and she said yes. It wasn't Molly. Molly taught me a lot about love, but it wasn't Molly. It was my wife, Liza. Honestly, she's the funniest, wittiest. You love her. She's just the most amazing human being ever. And I remember the day of our wedding, and she's in the back, and it's magical, transcendent, holy. And I look over my left shoulder, and I realize that my parents aren't there. And to have your heart broken by somebody that you love hurts bad, but to have your heart broken by somebody that you love and then to have the name of Jesus thrown into it is almost more than the psyche can handle. And I realize now I'm preparing for Failure Lab, and I'm thinking about what story do I share. I wanted it to be fresh. I didn't want it to be something what story do I share? And I realize I have this dream, and she's in it. She's not the center. She's just in it. And I realized I had done to her the same thing that I have preached sermons against, that I have raged against, religious hypocrisy. If there's anything that boils me more than, I've worked hard to kind of undo this, and I was guilty of it. Now, there's a PS. Can I give you a PS to the story? Yeah. Thank you. PS to the story. I wanted to make sure I could share this particular story, and I have not thought about or talked to Molly in a decade, and so I hunt her down to get her permission to share the story. Write a Facebook message, something along the lines of, hey Molly, since we've last talked, I've got this amazing family, these great kids, this amazing wife, but I have this story, and I was invited to do this thing, and I'm wondering if I could share our story, at least my version of our story. 5 hours later, she responds back, absolutely. You know, my husband, Dude Man, my husband is he's just the most amazing guy, and I have 4 kids with Dude Man, and absolutely, you may share our story. What a weird season of life. And she goes on and kind of talks about what's going on. And I was genuinely happy for her. Genuinely happy for her. And then she says, but P.S., one more thing. Because there's always a P.S., isn't there? One more thing. She says, a couple weeks ago, I discovered a lump. And I've been going through testing and just received the response back from the doctors that it's cancer, and they're telling me it's terminal. Whoa. Sometimes it's too late, right? You burn a bridge, you pull apart. Sometimes it's too late. Their heart is just way too hard, or they die, and it's just, you can't bring it back together. But sometimes it's not. There's always a P.S. It may not be too late. Thank you.